was trying to rush the last video, so I didn't fully give the story about Quinn and her mama, but since we got a few new 3 minutes, let's go. What's good, y'all? Lonnie Appleton here. If you have a couple of minutes, we're about to get into bonds. This is actually part 4 of family and bonds. On this episode of Harlem, Quinn is in a depressive state. She actually finds out after suffering from clinical depression for 40 years because of the big family secret. Oh, yes, what you're experiencing is clinical depression from your daddy's side. I've known the whole time, but I never told you because I wanted to protect you from it by not giving you the stigma of being clinically depressed, so you're just gonna suffer in silence. My silence. So mom's telling her all of this, and this is the reason why probably you're going through what you're going through, and everything is hitting you extra hard because you have this in your bloodline. Check out my Don't Keep Family Secrets videos if you want to know why we should stop keeping family secrets. Anyway, so mom's just like, you know, I love you, I support you, you can always call me. And Quinn's like, well, I don't feel that way. And mom's like, I don't know why you don't feel that way. I'm your mother.
She has barely said a word to me since I told her. Now she is here. Bitch, hold my train. Quick, Quinn. Mom.
Quinn! You look like a rainbow bright shit on a piece of muslin. I'm sorry. They serve a Latin alcohol here.
Mom, can I have a hug?
No, we're not here for that. We have another time.
We do?
Yes, you should. There's a line of men wanting my mommy. I'll hug you next weekend.
She's not gonna hug me next weekend.
No, probably not. But I will.
And then I started thinking about me and my mom. And I started making the connection of me and my mother have never sat down and had any conversations. I don't know my mother. And what I do know of my mother isn't good. And I don't tell these stories about my relationship with my mother to bash her at all. I tell these stories about my relationship with my mother because I am a 42-year-old woman, and damn it, if I can't talk about my childhood, when will I be able to talk about my childhood and it not be deemed I'm being disrespectful? How am I being deemed disrespectful by telling my childhood experience? If you don't want your children to tell their childhood experiences and you feel that you will be being disrespected by them revealing what happened to them, don't do it. Yeah, don't do stuff you're gonna be embarrassed of later in the first place. So anyway, look at all these black women glaring at me like, girl, you better shut up. Even look at Lauryn Hill, she look real like she judging me. She judging. The men don't care. Anyway, I just happened to go look over at Missy Elliott, and I was like, the disapproval of me talking about my mama. Anyway, so I started thinking about me and my mom's relationship and how we don't have any fond memories and how we never built a bond. And even though, the whole reason why I wanted to bring this up was even though I don't have any memories of my mom, whenever I had really, really low times in my life, I always picked up my phone and I called my mom. And I cried on my mom's shoulder, even though there was zero relationship there, just on the strength that she was my mother. And she would sit on the phone with me and she would say, even though it doesn't seem this way, I love you. Mothers and fathers, spouses and family, we have to do the work today to stop having to put a disclaimer on our love. Hey y'all want to talk about it? What's good, y'all? Lonnie Appleton here. If you have a couple minutes, I have a couple of messages. I am totally beyond the space in my life where something can happen and we don't talk about it. And we all just sit around for the energy of whatever happened to dissipate, and then we just go back to normal. By doing that and teaching your children to do that, you are not teaching them any type of conflict resolution skills. You are teaching your children to hold things in and everything's just going to be okay. And then they don't know how to resolve issues when everything's not okay. And then when they come into relationships, into friendships, and these people want to have discussions and to talk about things and clear the issue, your children are then left to feel inadequate and not have the skill to communicate. And then they're going to become defensive, or they're going to become sarcastic, or they're just going to shut down. So it's important to, even when we come into situations with our children, wait for the energy to pass because you don't want it to turn into another issue or argument. But definitely come back, reconvene, and address the issue so that your child not only has an understanding of your perspective, but your child also is developing the conflict resolution skills that are so desperately needed in our community. So Bailey and I had an issue 2 days ago. Her truck broke down in the middle of the street, and she called me and said, Mom, my truck stopped. What am I supposed to do? I was like, I really can't help you. I don't have a vehicle. All the information's under Dre's name. Call Dre. Mom! Because in her mind, she believes that I'm just pushing her off on Dre. In my mind, I'm thinking I am stranded at the house. I don't have access to any of the things you need necessary to get your vehicle out of the middle of the street. Dre does. Call Dre. She proceeds to tell me she only has 7% on her phone, and I'm like, call Dre. And she's just like, and hangs up on me. Not before she tells me I'm not being helpful. Now I'm dealing with all these kids, 3 of the 4 children consistently telling me how I am failing and not living up to their expectations in one way or another. Now I get it, they're children, and the 3 and the 5-year-old or the 4 and the 5-year-old don't necessarily know what they're saying, but that doesn't take away from the fact that they're saying what they're saying. You never know how someone's going to internalize something, so you should be mindful of the things that you say to someone. I have now determined this will be a 2-parter so I can slow down my speech. I allow some time to pass, and then I call Dre because she only has 7%, so I don't want to call her phone unless it's completely necessary. So I call Dre, and I'm like, hey, did you talk to Bailey? He's like, yeah, she's stuck outside the gate. I was like, oh, she's right outside the community. I can probably push her truck out of the middle of the street. Yeah, I think I'm She-Ra. Y'all remember He-Man and She-Ra? In the power of Grayskull. Yeah, I think I'm She-Ra. So as I walk down to go assess the situation, I see my neighbor, and I'm like, hey, neighbor with the big white truck, do you think you could bump my kid out of the street with your big bumper? Part 2. So my neighbor, he's pretty cool. We have a bit of a rapport, and he was like, yeah, I could bump her out of the street. What's good, y'all? Lonnie Appleton here. If you have a couple of minutes, we are discussing things. Because the trend in our community is whenever we have conflict within our home, within our community, with our friendships, all of these things, whenever we face a situation, we don't talk about it, we just have the argument. So we definitely exchange words when we're in the conflict. Then we break apart and we don't discuss it anymore unless we are re-entering the conflict. Never at any time are we actually sitting down and having a conversation saying, okay, this is where I came from, this is where you're coming from, and gaining a perspective and understanding of each other. And then we go into the world and we wonder why we have 0 conflict resolution skills and we have 0 understanding of other people's perspectives. Because we have spent our entire lives in our own head, in our own lens, and seeing things from our own perspective. Previous video for context, but I gave you some pretty good context there. So anyway, I get in the neighbor's truck, we go, Bailey's right outside of the gate, we get behind her, he bumps her into the gate area, and then we just leave the truck there and wait for Dre. The way that the neighbor leaves the truck, the tail is still kind of out into the traffic area of the gate area. So I'm like, okay, Bailey, put the truck in neutral so I can push it further into the thing. Because, I think I'm She-Ra, right? By the power of Grayskull. So she puts it in neutral, but she does not step on the brake. So the truck just starts going backwards. And I'm like, step on the brake. So I already got the energy on me from her telling me I'm not being helpful. And then I come to be helpful and she's not doing what she needs to do, but she's like, Mom, I've never done this before. And I'm like, I get it, but this is urgent. So I'm not yelling because I'm mad at you. I'm yelling at you because if you do not step on the brake, this truck is going to roll back into the street. So I already have frustrated energy on me on top of I'm trying to communicate with her in an urgent situation, and I'm in the back of the truck and she's in the front of the truck, so I have to yell. Anyway, we get up there, and at that time I'm like, okay, I'm going to have a conversation with you about how you spoke to me earlier, but the energy is still on it. If you want to have a conflict resolution conversation, the energy cannot be there. So I say what I say, she says what she says, and I say, can you figure this out on your own? And I go to the house. Before I said that, I had already told her, get all your stuff out of the truck and come to the house. So I gave her the information she needed. What I did not do is help her get her things out of the truck. I was like, you big and bad, you figure this out on your own. Like, you ain't going. I'm literally telling you, stop jumping foul with me, and you're jumping foul with me, and I don't have to take this. I'm human too. And of course, she feels like she's in the right to speak her mind, but time and place, kid.